Creator chose to create you because your essence is love. Now, for whatever reason, you've become divorced of that. It's become corrupted. You can choose to be defined by that. You can choose to go, well, that's just the way it is. Or you can make the sovereign, intentional, steadfast, non-negotiable choice to lean into the essence of what you truly are and to choose love again and again and again until there is breakthrough after breakthrough. The more we got into making those practices and those rituals a part of our life, the more the stories would fall away and we would come to be able to touch and then to taste and then to embody that signature, that frequency of boundless love.
You did actually want to be an extraordinary partnership. Like, I gleaned that from the depth of your being. And once you actually did choose me and you asked me to be your girlfriend, you went all in.
Oh yeah. No, I remember that conversation clearly. I was like, look, if we're going to do this, it's going to be with totality, or we're just not going to bother doing it at all.
How do I tell if a guy is just like, just going to string me along, or I'm never going to get what I want, versus like, I could tell that you were playing for real? I'd say for a lot of men, it's like, it can feel scary if you've never done it to meet the fullness of the feminine and her sexual wildness or her orgasmic nature. So how do you do it as a man, and do you have any guidance for the men out there?
What I would say is that
I'm Layla Martin. I'm your host of This Tantric Life. This podcast is for you to learn about and be able to use the incredibly powerful system of Tantra in your life. I have been teaching and studying classical and neo-Tantra for over 20 years. And when you apply that to sex, love, and relationships, as I love to do, you end up having conscious relationships, the deepest, most epic and magical sex, and the kind of intimacy that you get to be grateful for on your deathbed. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Baback and Layla, MD. He specializes in holistic and integrative health and has a wealth of expertise in the arenas of biooptimization and precision and personalized medicine. In addition to being a board-certified anesthesiologist, he is also trained in functional and longevity medicine. He leads a thriving private practice comprised of a multidisciplinary team of health professionals who collectively guide high-profile clients to optimal health. Dr. Amen's boundless passion for human flourishing has been informed by his lifelong study of the more esoteric and spiritual modes of health promotion, namely meditation, breathwork, and ancient Taoist and Tantric practices. Alongside his clinical career, he is also an entrepreneur as well as an international speaker on a diverse array of topics, including neuroscience, the psychedelic renaissance, and unifying models of consciousness. Welcome, my beloved, to This Tantric Life.
hello, lovely.
Hi, baby.
How are you, my love?
I'm really good. I have these like glittery butterflies in my tummy because I get to do this with you.
That makes two of us.
So your friend reached out to me and texted. He was like, I have this like tall, dark, handsome tantric doctor, newly single. And I was like, okay, like my Burning Man's like really, really, really busy. And he was like, yeah, but I think you guys would really, really love each other. And I was like, I don't know, I'm kind of overwhelmed. And then we ended up talking to each other anyways. I happened to be in a hyperbaric oxygen machine. You were like, I love hyperbaric.
But yes, we had a mutual friend connect us, and we spoke. We spoke briefly, well, for maybe 45 minutes on the phone before either of us headed into the playa, and we had an amazing conversation. It was riveting. I remember in the aftermath of that going, what just happened there? And then we were kind of non-committal about the notion of meeting up. And then when we finally checked in again after the conversation and said, hey, look, I remember you messaged me and you're like, my workshop is at Thursday at 3 p.m. And I just burst out laughing. I was like, that's great, because my workshop is also at Thursday at 3 p.m. And you were at Playa Alchemist and I was at Maxa. So on completely different sides of the playa. So I just wrote it off. I'm like, okay, well, clearly I'm not destined to see this person. And okay, well, it was a lovely conversation. And I just said, hey, have a beautiful burn. And that was it. And I completely forgot about it until said Thursday when, for a series of not entirely clear reasons, Maxa couldn't get their sound system working that day. And I wasn't able to do my talk. And it became pretty apparent by around about 3:30 that my talk wasn't going to happen. And I'd cleared the whole afternoon. So I was like, okay, what do I do? So at that point, I remembered that your workshop was on. So I rode across the playa, got to Playa Alchemist, went over to the big tent where you were teaching sex magic. And a mutual friend who you'd placed at the door was like, sorry, you've passed the point at which anyone can enter.
Emily Fletcher. It was Emily Fletcher sitting at the door.
Emily Fletcher sitting at the door. She's like, hey, I'm really sorry. It's strict instructions. You can't enter. The workshop's already begun. And I was like, oh, well, that was that then. And I turned back, went back to at the front of the tent where my bike was. And as I was unlocking my bike, apropos of nothing, for no reason whatsoever, this calm, quiet, but very clear and emphatic voice said, no. And I was like, okay, no. So I locked up my bike, did a 180 and walked back with no idea what I was going to say, no plan, nothing, other than I was like, no, I'm just going to go back. So I went back, looked at Emily, who was sitting down at this point, and I'm like, I'm here to see Layla, like this. She looked me up and down and just went, okay.
Because I put her under strict instructions in teaching sex magic. I was like, don't let anyone in 20 minutes after it starts because the container needs to be held. We can't have people coming and going. So she wasn't supposed to let anyone in. And she said, she took you in and she was like, all right,
make an exception.
Get in there.
Yeah. So I walked in. Your workshop was well and truly underway at that point. I sort of just made myself scarce, stood in the back. And I had no idea, truly, who you were. I'd never heard of you. For the majority of your work, as I understood it at that time, was predominantly with women. So it made good sense that I wasn't familiar with what you did. And to say that I was deeply impressed, nay, even blown away, is something of an understatement. Just the mastery and the fluidity and the eloquence of your prose and of your transmission, but also just the joie de vivre that you were emanating. I was just like, who is this person? Like, what is this? And I was really, there were a couple of things that you shared that really, really touched me very deeply, that spoke very, very much to what is true for me in terms of the spiritual principles that have guided my life. And one of those was that you said, I am just a lighthouse. It is your own nervous systems that is creating this level of magic and ecstasy and power and connection within you. I'm merely guiding the way. That stopped me in my tracks because so often there is this desire in those who are adept at teaching to make themselves synonymous with the teaching. Yeah. And I could see that really wasn't particularly alive in you. Like you were so deeply in service to the transmission, and that spoke to me so deeply. And I remember there were a couple other things that really just made me pause and go, wow. So when your workshop ended, I let your adoring public come up to you and, get their hugs and their photos. And right at the very end, after the crowd had cleared, I came up and I said, hey, hi, I'm Baback. We spoke on the phone, and then our eyes met. And there was this flash of recognition. And I can say that it's mutual now, but at the time I sensed that it was, but I didn't want to necessarily be presumptuous. But I did remember saying, I know you. Forgive me for if this sounds cheesy, but I know we've never met. Yeah. Yet I know you. And you're like, yeah, I get that too. And then one thing led to another, and we went out for dinner that night. We went on a date that night, and that date lasted 48 hours. And my goodness, what a journey! What an incredible trip it was. And for 48 of those 48 hours, I think we spent maybe 30 of them making each other laugh with reckless abandon and hilarity, and hadn't laughed that much in a very, very long time. It which is a huge green flag. So
I'm here to let you know that if you want to stay connected to my teachings and if you want to support this podcast, the best way to do it is to sign up for my email list. Email list sounds old school, and yet it is where I share my most intimate teachings, the path, process, heartbreak, and triumph of my life, and so much of the content that I make for you on a regular basis. So the way you get on the email list is by heading over to laylamartin.com, put your email address into any of the boxes. You can also sign up for cool practices like sex magic or energy orgasm, totally free. Heading on over to laylamartin.com, signing up with your email address. This supports the podcast. It supports this entire work and is the number one way for you to receive the highest teachings of this path. And one aspect of this story that I want to highlight is I was dating someone at the time, like very loosely, but we were really considering each other as life partners. And he was somewhat uncomfortable with what I did for work. And so I remember scheduling my sex magic workshop at Burning Man and being like, oh, like he's going to feel possibly slightly uncomfortable with this, that I'm even teaching this. Like, could I even imagine him coming? And one of the things that I think especially women deal with is the sense of like, oh, should you like tone yourself down, or are you too much, or do you need to be less than, so like a really powerful man will choose you. And Annie Lala always said, you will magnetize your true love doing your dharma, like giving your dharma. And so I remember being at that workshop, and we moved into a tent so that there would be more privacy, like a big ass tent. And the microphone blew, and there was like this really strong dust storm. And so it got hot as fuck, and I couldn't speak into the microphone, so I was shouting. And so I remember like dripping in sweat and like speaking super loudly so that like everyone could hear me, and just like the majesty in that room. It was like your hair rising on your skin just because it's so electric. And so to me, it was just always so meaningful that I was like, I'm going to do what I do, and I'm going to trust that actually brings me the love that is true. And so I love that you came and found me in that moment.
That's beautiful. That was all news to me until after the fact.
So from there, we didn't start dating. We were like...
No, we certainly did not. So unlike you, I was certainly not in the business of magnetizing anything of any significance to my life at all at that point in time. I remember at the end of our beautiful 48 hours together, you were so clear and emphatic. You were like, hey man, I'm looking for partnership. I'm like, yeah. I hate to tell you, I hate to break it to you, it's not me. I don't see you getting on a plane and coming to Australia anytime soon. So Australia's where I'm based for the listeners, for our viewers. And you're like, yep, no, I don't feel it either, but this has been real. This has been amazing. So you're like, so what does that make us? I'm like, I guess this makes us really powerful allies. And you're like, huh.
And for anyone who's ever met a handsome man who calls you an ally, I was like, don't ever say that word again. Like that's like a hard friend zone word.
And there was something very potent though that you also shared in that exchange, and that really spoke again very, very deeply to me. And that was, are either of us truly ready for the power and the depth of a dynamic within which there will be no place to hide?
Yeah.
Because the level of our ability to see so deeply and so clearly into the other in the 48 hours that we'd spent together was, it was ineffable. It had a truly indescribable quality to it. So,
and can I share one last piece around that, which was, 10 hours into our date, right? And you took me into the pyramid. So for those of you who don't know Burning Man, it's like this giant pyramid, right? It's one of the biggest structures on the playa at Burning Man. And we climbed up into the rafter. So we were sitting inside of the pyramid, and you were like, look, like this is really potent. And I just want you to know, like, I'm not ready for partnership.
I'm not available.
Yeah. I want to do more healing. I don't want to be in a long distance relationship. You live in LA. I live in Australia. There's just so many reasons why this isn't going to work. And I remember saying in my very blissed out state, I was like, Yeah, you know what? If the universe wants us together, there's no trauma healing or ocean that's going to keep us apart.
You did say that. You're like, well, hey man, if the universe wants us to be together, we're going to be together. And I remember my rational mind being like, nuh-uh, no.
So fast forward a couple of months, I did a darkness retreat. And I remember when I went into the darkness, I was FaceTiming you, like literally like minutes before they took me into the darkness. And then when I got out of the darkness, you were the first person that I called. You were the first person I wanted to talk to. And that really stayed with me, the sense of like, wow, like right before I went and did this deep spiritual journey, you were the one, right, that I was speaking to. And after being in the dark for 6 days and being so in like, such a profound process in that darkness, I prayed every day. I did deep ceremony, I wasn't taking any medicine or anything like that, just deep ceremony. And I was like, I am healing my relationship to the masculine so that I can be in a true love partnership. And every day I would go up, there was this little bed up on the wall that like felt like it was basically, like, I'll just say this in a short way, which is that the guy who built the center, when he came in and the light came on, and I was like, oh yeah, I spent a lot of time up there. And he was like, how did you even get up there? And I was like, I climbed the holes in the wall. And he was like, what? It was like this little bed that probably was covered in spider webs that I couldn't even see in the dark. And I would crawl up there, and starting with my dad, I just started breathing and feeling. And I was like, every single experience, every trauma I was still carrying, every emotion, I would let it process and process and process. And I would let it process until I got to forgiveness. And then I would keep going until I got to gratitude. And I did that then with my first crush, and then my first boyfriend, and then my first adult boyfriend. And I went through every single man that I had a relationship with, or even that I had dated recently up until that time. And I remember going through every single one and getting to this space where I felt like I could finally be in my soul's truth as much as possible and relate to the masculine, not from some imprint of the past, but from who I am and what my heart really is. And you are just so there with me in that journey. And it was actually in that darkness that I got this strong flash, and it was like, invite Baback to New Year's, like invite him to come to New Year's with you. And I thought it was a joke. Like I also thought that the universe was fucking with me.
As did I, yes. Yeah.
I was like, what? And it was like, just do it. And I was like, okay, fine. And so I invited you to a New Year's celebration.
Yeah. And it was an invitation that I initially resisted at first too. I was like, why me? But we did start consulating more powerfully just over the phone in that period, in the aftermath of your darkness retreat. And I do want to speak to what I've felt in this time that we've been relating, is that at no point have I ever had the impression that I have been representative of your previous grievances with the masculine. Truly, I'm not saying that for posterity, for appearances, for the viewers. I truly have been a deeply grateful beneficiary of the exquisite, extraordinary, powerful work that you engaged in that darkness retreat. And I'm, again, speechless as to, the courage and the tenacity and the fortitude of character that it takes to go there in the first instance, but to do so with such ferocity and simultaneous tenderness. So very much honoring you in that, thanking you in that.
Yeah, it's important. Otherwise we can't see each other. And
Truly.
I can't see you all the time, but I feel like I can see you so much better than I would have if I hadn't done that.
Well, the ability to see our beloved, to see our significant other, is fraught with so much of our historical angst and trauma, as it is, even in the absence of having done this work. And there are instances where we truly don't see each other temporarily, and so we come to a place of grace and clarity. But I feel that we are infinitely better off, and have been infinitely better off by virtue of that body of work that you engaged in. So thank you. For the record, I don't project my previous experiences with the feminine onto you at all. Ever.
So at New Year's, I remember the moment that really changed me and changed how I felt about you. I already knew that you were incredibly special to me. Like the magnetism was clear. And I was open to seeing what was true. And there was this moment, it was on New Year's Eve. I think it would have been into the first day, but late in the night. And I crawled on top of you. We were both wearing our like burner clothes, our party clothes. And I remember the energy just started to crystallize. And I'd never felt anything quite like that. It was like the signature of our beings danced together and formed. It was almost like a signature of beauty. And it was crystalline and potent and ethereal and powerful. And I just remember that moment of, beyond anything my mind could ever conjure, what our energy did together. And I was like, holy shit. Like, what are you? What are we?
Yeah, that was tangible for me as well. Truly it was. And it burned away. Not all, but a lot of the stories that I was very steadfastly holding on to. I even came to Baja, to the New Year celebration, really pretty deeply entrenched in the story of like, this is an amazing, special being in my life, and we are going to be the best of friends, god darn it. That kind of vibe. So yeah, to note that incredible weaving of energy, this incredible third entity, this morphogenetic field that rose up between us, and to feel how tangible that was, how electric it was, it stopped me in my tracks as well.
I'm excited to take a moment and share with you about the VITA coaching certification. This program has been around for almost 10 years, and it is my highest offering. The sexual wellness industry is forecast to be a $125 billion industry by the year 2026. Why is this? Because people are more ready than ever to express their sexuality and build deeply connected, meaningful relationships, and also, obviously, to have the most outrageous orgasms and erotic experiences of their lives. But most people are never taught how to do any of this, how to have extraordinary relationships, how to have the sex they really crave. They're looking for qualified, confident professionals to teach them. And my VITA Sex, Love, and Relationship Coaching Certification is a powerful 1-year professional certification that's helped more than 2,000 coaches make their way to becoming incredibly successful and highly paid sex, love, and relationship professionals. But this program doesn't just train you in every aspect of the coaching process so that you can build a successful online business. VITA Coaching will also walk you through the personal transformation of a lifetime, because the best coaches have done the work themselves. You'll discover so many transformative techniques like breathwork, meditation practices, self-pleasuring tools that you'll apply to your own life first, and then you'll use these same proven tools and techniques to get laser-focused results for your clients. We also hold an exclusive live embodiment retreat just for VITA coaching students and alumni every year. In this retreat, you'll experience 7 days of live teaching with the VITA teachers and I, and really refine your skills as a sex, love, and relationship coach. So if you feel called to claim your spot in this multi-billion-dollar industry and transform not only your own life, but the life of so many others around the world, you can join me inside the VITA coaching certification now at laylamartin.com/VITA coaching. That's laylamartin.com/VITA coaching, VITA. So from there, we started talking and exploring, and, I decided to come and be with you in Australia. And I still remember you being like, are you really going to uproot your entire life just to go and see someone in Australia? And I remember saying, like, why else would one build a life of success and abundance and opportunity and freedom if not to be able to follow their heart anywhere in the world?
You did say that, and I still did my best to talk you out of it. It's just like, you got a pretty good life in LA. I live in a very small, very quiet, hippie coastal town in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. For those who know Australia, I live in Byron Bay, which is God's country. It's heaven. It's paradise. It is the most jaw-droppingly beautiful place. It is my Eleusis, it's my church. It is where I commune with the elements and with the infinite, timeless wisdom of nature. But it is a tiny little town, and it is night and day compared to the life that you would have had in Los Angeles. And then, yeah, you just sailed right in, which again left me like pretty stunned, pretty speechless. And of course, when you arrived, that's when, you know, the real fun started. That's when we really started to engage in, for want of a better term, the work of like crawling through the crushed glass on our hands and knees, coming right up against all the relational trauma that we still held. Like, we'd both done enormous amounts of work individually. We'd both engaged in so much earnest and ardent healing, trauma-informed therapy, breath work, somatic experiencing, the list goes on. So many things that we'd engaged in for so many years to come to this place of deep attunement and awareness to where our wounds were, where our core wounds were, how we showed up with power, grace, and compassion, and where the places we showed up with like pure projection and total overwhelm, and then but also just the humility of realizing that for all the work that, I'll speak for myself, that I had done, the ways in which having this deep, powerful bond with someone who could see all the layers that I was working with and through, and I'd like to think that I could see you with an equal degree of clarity, how much of our relational trauma it brought up. and just how fucking hard it was to start to work through that, to the point where I remember there was this one really poignant moment where you were like, I thought I was going to come here and we were going to have this like really beautiful romantic journey. And I'm like, yep, we kind of skipped the limerence. We kind of skipped the limerence and we went straight into the...
We still had a lot of fun.
we had an amazing amount of fun. We had incredible amounts of fun.
And a very sexy time.
We did. But we went from, you know, making each other laugh 70% of the time to maybe like 7% of the time. There's an order of magnitude in the drop off in terms of the hilarity and the levity. It kind of just went out the window. I was like, yep, cool. We gave you a taste of what's possible. Now sit down and do it.
Now just watch as you make each other cry.
Watch as you make each other cry. And yeah, the loops and the I don't even know what to call it, but just the trip to Psychoville that we took off the back of seemingly small things like that, and the Pandora's box that it would open was very powerful, really potent, and it really required both of us to double down on all these tools that we'd learned about communication, about self-responsibility, about being curious about the other's experience, and speaking first and foremost or only about what was true for us rather than projecting onto the other what we thought was going on in them. It really was a very rapid induction into a fourth dan black belt dojo of relating.
Totally. And I remember a couple of things from that time. You mentioned walking on your hands and knees through crushed glass. And so this comes from Mama Gina. And I called her at the time while I was in Australia. And I was like, I don't know why this is so hard. She's like, look, I don't know why this is the case, but I don't know anybody who's ever gotten to true love and epic spiritual partnership who hasn't had to walk on their hands and knees through glass. And what was interesting for me at the time, right, is I had a couple of friends who had fallen in love like fairly recently. Like they were still strongly in their limerence phase. And I was just like, but what about them? And one of the reasons why I didn't want to share about our relationship sooner is because I felt like, look, in early stages of relationship, you don't have a lot of perspective on what is true. Like you're being doused in all these chemicals, you're obsessed, or you're having breakdowns, like whatever's going on, right? You don't yet really know or have the perspective on your partnership until you've made it through the portal. And I mean, we're still there will always be portals in relationship. And so at the time I was kind of looking at those friends and being like, is that what it's supposed to be like? And what's fascinating is I think there are many different flavors of partnership, and people want different things out of partnership. But I will say this, of the couples that I know who are doing it strong and deep and true, there is always a phase where they walk on their hands and knees over glass. Like, life and love will bring you to your knees if you are playing full out, whatever that looks like. And it's different for every couple. And that's not to say, I wanted to be careful saying this to everyone, because it's not to say that you should ever endure abuse or like a really bad relationship or anything like that. But there was an unmistakable mark between us of the thing that kept us downward spiraling instead of upward spiraling was unmistakably the same pain and trauma and stories that was also keeping us small, period, right? It wasn't just like, oh, we're like, bringing each other down. It was like, no, we're constellating in such a way that I would look into the mirror of you, and at times you would highlight the thing that I could recognize of like, yes, this is getting exacerbated between us, but this is mine. And I've carried this in every relationship, and I've been carrying this since childhood. And this thing is kind of my kryptonite. Like, it actually is the thing that, like, no matter how much meditation I've done, no matter how many powerful spiritual practices I've done, when this thing happens with a man, I lose all of my practice, all of my higher self connection. My nervous system takes over into the most fear-based part of me. And when I would look through walking away or healing that, it was so clear to me that healing that was actually the path to my power. So there was that. And then there was also just that deep knowing in the stillness. Like, whenever people would say, they ask me all the time, how do you know if I should stay or I should go? And I said, the only thing I've ever known how to do is to get really still and really quiet and listen to the deepest part of your heart and the deepest part of the divine within you. And every single time I did that, it was clear. It was like, stay. Like, this is true. This is the truth. And it was very humbling, because I had surrendered into you. I didn't pack up my life in LA and leave my beautiful queendom and a room, honestly, I still miss, with like a gold stripper pole right next to an altar and like my
wasn't
nature
even my
bed.
room, and I miss it too.
Yeah. It was exquisite. It was exquisite.
Room. It was an amazing room.
It was so beautiful. And I packed all that up, and I said goodbye to my friends after we'd spent years building this really exquisite place. And I didn't leave from some disempowerment, like, I'm just going to like crumble my life for a man or something like that. I left because I knew it was true. It was true to leave LA. It was true to follow my heart and come to you. And I know I had this fantasy that would immediately bring me to amazingness, that would immediately be like the relationship of my dreams. And it was hard, like I've referenced a few times being like alone, washing dishes and crying. And like, it was because, I moved to a city where I didn't have any friends, and a town where I had no friends. And you were at work often. And I wanted that. I wanted to be in nature. I wanted to be there. And when things were really hard between us, like, there was a real spiritual moment that I had to grow up from, that I had to mature out of, which was kind of like, I surrendered and followed you, universe. Like, how dare you put me here? As opposed to, when I do what's true, I have no idea what will come. Like, this universe carries all flavors and all signatures. All you get is, I did it because it was true, and then come what may. And so I really like pulsated through those moments, not because I was holding on to some fantasy that like we were going to blossom into everything I'd ever wanted, but because it felt so true. And because I knew that I'd never met anyone like you before, or had the kind of alchemy that we had. And I remember telling you once, like, we can burn this to the ground if we want, but this is the most special thing I've ever found. And like, I'm not going to walk away.
As always, I just want to thank you for the exquisite clarity with which you speak to things, and the potency. And there was a commensurate process going on with me, in that, even though I hadn't packed up my life, there was this seismic shift in my life, in the shape of one Layla Martin that had come to visit me, that I'd gone from, years of living alone to now cohabitation straight away. I remember you very kindly said, hey, look, if it's too much, I can sort of get my own Airbnb. And I was like, over my dead body, you'd come all this way. So there's no way I was going to allow you to sort of stay anywhere else. And yet the notion of going from zero to cohabitating, even though it was only for a few weeks, was still like this very powerful crucible for me, because all of a sudden I had to really become exquisitely aware, incredibly aware of how my mood, my movements, my mindset, whatever I was carrying from work that day, how that was landing in someone else. But then also, much more powerfully than that, how the stories that I was holding on to were landing within our dynamic. And just as you described, how the stories I was holding on to in other areas of my life were showing up in the dynamic of our relating and in the container that we were both striving to build, but it was still very much in its nascent, in its embryonic stages. And I had yet to encounter, it had been years and years and years before, since anyone had been able to see me truly for who I actually was, and would look at some of the more difficult and challenging aspects of my personality from a place of understanding and compassion and a desire to understand, rather than going, oh, you suck, you're toxic, you're difficult, or whatever. And I remember being really deeply, deeply moved by the fact that even in the throes of our descents down into Psychoville, we would always just have unshakable respect for each other. We would have unfailing regard for each other's well-being, safety, what was true, what was alive in one another, even though it was incredibly difficult. And it had been, almost a decade since I'd encountered anything like that. And to be able to experience something of that gravity at this stage of life, where I've been more myself than I've ever been before, and I'd like to think more equipped as well with a series of tools and abilities to look into oneself, to meet the depths of one's own being more deeply, and then to be able to constellate with someone who could meet in all those incredibly deep places with precision, with clarity, was astonishing, very powerful, a very beautiful gift. And as we constellated deeper and as we circled through some of our projections and came to truth, with each rupture we came to a place of deeper understanding, deeper abilities to see the other clearly, understand and appreciate the other. I found that the holographic mind prisons that have been holding me back in other areas of life also began to break up, because the stories that we tell ourselves about who we are, how we move in the world, where we're headed, what's possible for us, they are reflected back to us 100-fold within the scope of a powerful, aware, intentional relationship, if we let it. And it was very clear that, we were letting it. We were letting it declare itself and be shown. And it was incredible.
Yeah. Should we drink invisible sex magic?
Great.
Baby, this sex magic's amazing. We forgot to bring it.
Wow. Oh, it's really good.
It's an incredible mix of supplements and nootropics and aphrodisiacs that helps you feel more glittery before sex. One of the ways we use it is when we know we want to do sex magic and we have a sexy ritual to do and we're both about to fall flat on our faces from exhaustion. We mix up some sex magic and we're like, I'm still kind of tired, but I'm actually still ready to do the ritual.
We're doing this.
And then we have a mind-blowing sex ritual.
What she said.
Brought to you by Mood. Oh, hey there. I am stirring up a cup of my favorite elixir. So this is Sex Magic, and this is an incredible product from the sexy supplement company Mood. It's my company. We formulated this with an all-female team of scientists to be able to activate your eros. So it can help you feel tingly. It can bring more energy into your life, more creativity. And if you take it under the right circumstances, you can have better sex. And what it does is it just opens up my body. It opens up my heart. I feel tingly. I feel alive. Sometimes it helps me have a better orgasm. And it is sugar-free. It's sweetened with monk fruit. That beautiful purple color comes from beetroot and blueberries. And it is just this incredible mix of ingredients like shilajit and huperzine A and mucuna pruriens. So special. If you were feeling called to check it out, you can head over to shopmood.com. That's shopmood.com. And there's a special discount code for being part of this Tantric Life. It is this Tantric Life 15. So you're just going to enter that at checkout and you're going to get 15% off of your first order. Something I want to share for someone listening and also for my own ego is that it's not like you were like, no, I don't know how I feel about you. Like, I'm not sure. And like some situationship.
No, I was like, you are an exquisite, unbelievable gem of a human. You are the most remarkable example of humanity I've encountered since God knows when. And you should get on a plane and go. That was just like, and I don't want to do partnership. And you're like, what?
Right. In the very beginning, but you did
truly.
also like in the very, very early beginning, but you also said like, I do kind of want to be in partnership. Like that is, you actually did. But what kept me going, right? Because I'm always aware, speaking to you, if you're listening, right? I know so many women who get stuck in situationships, who get stuck with guys who are like, I don't know how I feel about you, or I don't want partnership, or I don't want kids, or whatever. And with you, like the thing that really was different for me was that you were very clear about how much you loved me. And you weren't entirely sure if now was the time or you could do it. But you did actually want to be an extraordinary partnership. Like I gleaned that from the depth of your being, right? So it wasn't like you were like, well, there was a part of you that was like, maybe I just, never want to get in this mess again, right? But there was something inside of you that I felt very deeply. And once you actually did choose me and you asked me to be your girlfriend, you went all in.
Oh yeah. No, I remember that conversation clearly. I was like, look, if we're going to do this, it's going to be with totality, or we're just not going to bother doing it at all.
Yeah.
And fun fact, a few weeks after we made that declaration to each other, we broke up.
It was a few months. Yeah. But like the thing about you is you went all in with me. Totally. Like you built a container, you chose into monogamy, or monogamy-ish, like you were fully devoted to our container. And so I just want to say that for anyone listening of like, how do I tell if a guy is just like, just going to string me along, or I'm never going to get what I want, versus like, I could tell that you were playing for real. Oh yeah.
No, I made it clear like, hey, this is my North Star, right? This is the deepest prayer of my soul, to create a dynamic of boundless beauty, complete transparency, upward spirals of growth, of dharmic alignment, whereby we are the wind under each other's wings, whereby we are a catalyst for growth of unassailable compassion, boundless beauty and support for the other. It's either that or nothing. And then it was like, and I don't know that I'm entirely in a point in my life where I can pour the totality of my being into such a pursuit.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what we sat with for a period of time.
We did.
And then we did go all in. And I'd love to share some of the magic that we experienced and some of the challenges. So one thing that was unquestionably magical between us has been a tantric practice, right? Like using the microcosmic orbit, activating chakras and lovemaking, like such a deep ceremonial way at times of making love, and at other times of just being naughty and wild and free and liberated. And one of the things that I love so much about you is, when we met, I said, I want to walk to the edges of the universe and I want to peer over and I really want to hold someone's hand while I do it. And you were like, I want to walk to the edges of the universe and peer over.
Absolutely.
And so I always found in you such a potent ability. I've never once felt with you like there's somewhere that I could go sexually that you would not hold the vastness of your being and your heart and your eros for me. Like you have such a shameless way of being that's so potent and so fearless, specifically in the domain of energy and eros. Like, I feel like I could take you anywhere in those places. And I know that you've said before that this is like a soul gift of yours, like it's your home. But do you have any guidance for someone listening who's like, wow, I wish my man had that, right? Because for most people, we find some of our greatest contractions in sex, or I'd say for a lot of men, it's like it can feel scary if you've never done it to meet the fullness of the feminine and her sexual wildness or her orgasmic nature. So how do you do it as a man, and do you have any guidance for the men out there?
Firstly, thank you for that unbelievable reflection. Bless you. And what I would say is that this is our birthright. To those for whom they're luckier and it's come naturally, for want of a better term, great. Please keep doing that. Keep going, leaning in ever more deeply, ever harder. And for those where, the path towards that level of being so at home with sexual expression in all its guises has not been as fluid or as easy to come by. Knowing deeply in your bones, knowing with the totality of your being in every fiber of your vessel, that is how you were made. It is your blueprint. It is your birthright. And all that really needs to happen is lovingly, with intention and with unassailable, boundless compassion for self, removing all that is in the way of that is really what needs to happen, rather than I have to go and acquire something. I have to go and learn a bunch of tips or tricks or techniques or do this thing with my tongue. And it's no. Those are the hallmarks and trappings of being incredibly free and liberated and at home with one's sexual power and sexual expression. But the real work is it's about liberation of heart consciousness. It's really about healing the aspect of your psyche, if you will, or the perception you have of yourself, and coming to know yourself as whole, as perfect, as beautiful, not in spite of your flaws, but because of them, of being infinitely worthy, and of knowing, again, in the subatomic particles that comprise you, that Creator breathed life into you just to experience the cosmos through the unique and crystalline lens of your singular consciousness. That's how much you are loved. That's how much you are wanted. That's how much your presence in this realm, in this physical aspect of creation, was intentionally ordained.
Yes.
And when you are able to look at yourself from that vantage point and really own it, really, really know that it's true. And it takes meditation, it takes creating space in your nervous system through things like somatic experiencing, through breath work, through mindset training, even engendering that particular frame into your life on a daily basis, whether it's through affirmation, whether it's through Psych-K, hypnosis, intentionally well-held ceremonial spaces, whatever is most true for you. And I utilize all of those. Coming into a place of such unquestioning self-love that anything and everything that arises in you, you just look at it with curiosity, with compassion, with a sense of humor, and with a sense of absolute acceptance. And really just practicing that on a daily basis. At first it will feel disingenuous. At first it will feel fraudulent even. I know for me it did for a time. And I had a lot of difficulty with self-love. But the more I was able to just lean into it, the more I was able to just apply that same level of complete acceptance and that boundless compassion and curiosity and allowing for one's beloved, for the other. And also, I'm getting there, but for humanity as a whole in all its guises. For reasons that I can't entirely put my finger on, it found its most expressed and its most comfortable manifestation in the realm of sacred intimacy and in the realm of sacred sexuality for me. Now, whether this is a past life lineage or whether it's just something that came as a result of the Taoist practices and the Tantric philosophies that I've been studying for most of my life, I can't be sure. But I do know that the underlying mechanism by which it came to be, and that can be replicated by anyone else, is a healing of that consciousness, is a healing of that aspect of the psyche that, for whatever reason, whether it's past trauma, whether it's social programming, whether it's some kind of weird idea that you've gotten about yourself from a previous setback or something horrible that someone said or did to you, the how you got there is immaterial. It's knowing that all of those things are a distortion. They are, like I said before, a holographic mind prison. And if you can just lovingly undo them and come home to the exquisiteness of oneself, there is a blossoming. There is a ebullient, effervescent celebration and just beingness that is so full of life and so full of nectar. And I live in overwhelming gratitude. I'm feeling it right now for its presence in my life. And I just want to stress that it was not something that I was born with. I lived the first 7 years of my life in an active war zone. I then migrated to a country where I didn't speak the language, and I was the token brown kid with a weird name and a strange accent. Didn't speak the language at all, and that I was teased mercilessly, like to the point of being beaten up and called all manner of names. So I had no small layer of baggage to undo, but really that kind of made it easier, because I had this gigantic amount of crap in the way. And that crap was so far removed from the flashes of just serenity that I would be afforded with when I was in a deep meditation, or after a particularly powerful somatic experiencing session where I would just be in my body without a story, that I could see the bigness of the lie. And because I knew that it was a gigantic lie, I could start to pick apart huge chunks of it at a time. So that's kind of what punctuated my story, my journey back home. And also there was, enormous amounts of relational trauma in terms of, a marriage breaking down. My ex-wife and I had a stillborn son. So a lot of things to unpack and undo, but because of the gravity and the intensity of the trauma, it made it a choiceless choice for me to dive in there fully and come to a place of love and wholeness.
Yeah. And in some ways, I don't know if I've ever said this to you particularly, but one of the things that would come to me in our hardest moments is I've looked at some of my friends who had almost zero trauma in their childhood. Like, they were loved and adored and safe. And I think everyone has some trauma from the breakup of our tribal society and communal structures and spiritual trauma and things like that. But they had this intact sense of safety and goodness. And I would look at the way that they would be able to form relationships, and I would be in awe, because there was a time in my life where that felt so foreign to me, to be able to love that easy, to be able to trust that much, to be able to feel so safe in the hardest moments, if you're going to make a story about your beloved, make up the best one,
right,
instead of the worst one you can imagine. And with us, we both, as does every single human on this planet, have this miraculous remembrance of divine beauty and divine peace and erotic liberation and love. And I'm a child of sexual abuse and a horribly sociopathic father and a family filled with trauma and sorrow and cheating and abuse. And you're a child of war and lineage of trauma, of having everything taken away, being chased out of your country, racism, bullying, everything like that. And I would remember feeling the beauty of us and how we would kill our love because of the parts of our nervous system that would feel so unsafe because of the way we were raised.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, okay, that's so beautiful for the people who get gifted it, right? Because then they get to gift it on to everyone else, and what a beautiful thing to do and to enjoy their lives. But I remember thinking, like, what about us? Because most of the world is actually like us. And if we're actively destroying our love and the magnificent beauty between us with all of the tools and all of the privilege and all of the desire we have, like, what hope is there for the world when we're hurting so bad? Yeah. And I remember thinking, like, I really want to know that we can do it, because there was a part of me that was like, maybe we both just need less traumatized partners. You know, maybe we both just need someone a little less fucked up. And like, and then I really remember, it wasn't just a thought, it was like a soul feeling of like, yeah, but if we can do it, right? Like, if you and I can do it, like, what does that mean for everybody else? Because I don't want to live with the heartbreak at the end of my life knowing that I killed off love because I let my trauma be more powerful than the love of my heart. And I feel like a pretty powerful, sovereign person, and I know that I have killed so much love in my life.
Likewise.
For no ill will, no meaning to, just the imprints in my nervous system. And I wanted for you and I to make it so badly, not just because I want to spend my life with you and because I love you so deeply, but I wanted us to make it because it was like, holy shit, like, I don't want to walk away, because I want to know that it's possible, no matter what you've been through, that you can learn to create a container of safety and goodness and love in your partnership, and hold on to that and keep building it every single day, no matter what you've been through.
Wow. Yes. 1,000 times yes. And like you, have killed off oceanic love by virtue of the trauma that I'd carried around, and by virtue of the stories that I would hold on to. And again, it comes back to choosing, using one's intention and free will to say, I will not be defined by my trauma. I will not be defined by the story, by the ideas, by the programming, by the conditioning. I will choose love, even when it feels so far away, even when it feels so impossibly alien, even when it feels dangerous to the point of existentially annihilating me. I will lean into it, and I will trust that it is not only my birthright, but my actual blueprint. It is, I was forged, this being, we all were forged in the spirit and in the intentionality of love. Creator loved humanity, and not religious. You can put whatever word you want there for creator, God, however you please. Creator chose to create you because you were that loved, because your essence is love. Now, for whatever reason, you've become divorced of that. It's become corrupted. It's become, what is the most natural thing has become alien in your being. Okay. You can choose to be defined by that. You can choose to go, well, that's just the way it is. Or you can make the sovereign, intentional, steadfast, non-negotiable choice to lean into the essence of what you truly are and to choose love again and again and again until there is breakthrough after breakthrough, until there is portal after portal, and to just lean into it and to walk through it time and time and time again. There are a lot of tools, there are a lot of practices that make that a lot easier.
Yeah.
And we've been blessed. And we've been blessed to have them in our dynamic. And certainly the more we got into making those practices and those rituals a part of our life, a non-negotiable part of our day, the more the stories would fall away. And we would come to be able to touch and then to taste and then to embody that signature, that frequency of boundless love for self, for other, for beloved, for humanity at large, for the totality of creation.
Yeah. I created this mastermind for couples because it is the experience that I wanted for me and my beloved. I was like, where can we learn Tantra together? Where can we become masterful at sacred sexuality together? And beyond that, where can we get the same education in how to communicate at a ninja level, and how to create emotional safety for one another, and on how to heal on the deepest levels whatever wounds keep us from staying in love over a lifetime. That's why I made this mastermind. It is going to be super fun because you get to go on the sexual adventure of a lifetime. I'm talking majestic European castles, beautiful nature experiences where you will be trained step by step in how to create erotic rituals and how to make love in an energetic and advanced spiritual way. It is You'll also get 6 months of in-person classes on relational skills and tools, and also erotic mastery. Everything from how to touch each other in the most exquisitely sensual way, to how to have the most incredible energy orgasms together, to just how to say difficult things in a deeply loving way. You are going to get the advanced relationship training of a lifetime. If this is something you're interested in, you can go ahead and check it out at laylamartin.com/tantric mastermind. And I certainly, in my solo journey in this lifetime have felt like I'm going to get my life back or I'm going to die trying.
Likewise.
I'm going to love myself or I'm going to die trying. And if you've ever experienced really deep trauma, that's actually the feeling, because it just...
But it is a death, because the traumatized part of you, the traumatized aspect of your psyche that has a stranglehold on who you are in that moment, it's going to die. So there is a death and a rebirth.
Or transform, And what you just said is so beautiful, because in many ways, our tantric practice, our rituals, I want to say they saved us, because they kept anchoring us into the truth of our union.
They made us possible, Without them, we wouldn't exist.
No, we would go down to the beach and we started innovating rituals. We started making tantric technologies and methodologies together. And I would sit on your lap in Yabyum, in the endless beauty that is the Byron Bay beaches at sunset. And the stars would be out and Venus would be rising, and there would be this beauty. Venus would be setting, and there'd be this beauty between us that was unmistakable. And I would remember us doing our breath work together, our microcosmic orbits together, sex magic, different astrological rituals. And it would be like this is the thing. And the trauma is the lie. It's the deception, it's the delusion, it's the egoic poison in many ways. But this, when we sit here, it's like I would have all the drops of nectar of the remembrance of what is and what was so special between us. And it would make me know in my heart and soul that I would find our love and our safety and our partnership, or I would die trying, that it mattered that much to me. And so what I loved from that is through all of this and through our deep mirroring of each other. And like you said, if we get together, there will be nowhere to hide. Through all of that, there was this magical methodology that pulsated out of us, built on your 20 years of tantric practice and Taoist practice, and mine as well, coming together and moving through our lovemaking, our breath work, our bodies. And it was so unmistakably sacred. It was so beautiful. And we started teaching together very early in our partnering, to the degree that I was like, do I just desperately want to teach with my partner this much? Like, is this just like pure ego that I just want to like stand on stage with this man? I was like, no, because I hold teaching with so much integrity and so much respect. I have never wanted to put anyone on stage who I didn't feel that would be the highest service to anyone present.
Similarly, I come from teaching medical students and teaching medical concepts, and you are not allowed to convey any facts or any body of knowledge or a framework that you do not deeply understand, because you are, delinquent of your responsibility to the people who are listening to you, who afforded you the most sacred gift of their attention. If you are even a little bit off, it's not acceptable, especially where I come from, the academic lineage that, runs through medicine, thankfully. And also, quite thankfully, has ran through the lineages that I've been so deeply blessed to study within as it comes to Taoism and Tantra as well.
Yeah. And when I was writing our first workshops, I'll never forget, it was like writing the application for our first workshops to be on stage. And it felt like the universe was typing through me. And I remember being like, what the fuck? Like, what is this madness? and this is how I do most things in my life. It's just like, okay, if this is the impulse of energy. And I remember when we first started teaching together, the magnificence that would flow through us. It was so remarkable, to the point where sometimes we'd be so lost in whatever it was we were going through. And I'd just be like, wow, this is so potent. And I remember the first time I heard you teach a men's class, because it was actually in my mom's house, because we went to go take care of my mom. And so you ended up teaching in her guest room. And I was in the bathroom cleaning something, and I heard your transmission, and I was like, wow. And you've taught your whole life in your profession, but that was the first time you taught like that, right? That subject matter, that level of intensity. And it blew me away. I was like, wow. Every single time that you transmit wisdom, someone said the other day, and I loved it. They were like, do you know that Layla's jaw is just dropped whenever you're speaking? She's just looking at you.
Thank you.
In so much awe. It's been so beautiful.
The sentiment is mutual. The risk of this becoming a mutual love fest.
People love hearing couples love on each other, baby.
For me, I definitely had some reservations. I was like, how is this going to go? I remember when you first dreamt up the Tantric Mastermind, you're like, it's going to be this, and this, and this, and oh yeah, you're teaching. And I'm like, teach what? What are you talking about? Because I had this idea that one needs to, have, unless you've been doing something for untold years, that you shouldn't be doing it at all. But
you've been doing it for 20 years.
Right. But the thing that really moved the needle for me was the reflection and the feedback that we got from our participants, that they would come up time and time again and say, that opened a door in my mind for me. That opened up a pathway that I can see really clearly now, whereas before it felt that it was going to just be stuck forever, and I was resigned to that. And really just being in perpetual service to the power of the transmissions, just stepping out of the way and listening to whatever wants to come through, whatever's the most important thing that is in service to this exquisite, incredible, sacred collection of people who have, again, afforded you the most powerful and sacred thing that they have, and that is their attention and their time.
Yeah. And so we taught the Tantric Mastermind, this beautiful 6-month container where we took couples to, I still call it a castle in Broughton because that gives people a great idea. It's technically a hall, but whatever. It's a romantic place in England.
Old English hall. Yes. A very stately hall with, I think, 70 rooms or something.
And also to Palm Springs for this really magical, mind-blowing experience. And then 6 months of training in between. And when we really sat down, it was look, if you were going to get get, you don't like when I use PhD because you think do people actually have a PhD? It's like it's not that hard.
So someone who's been through 4 years of a PhD and defended a thesis, they might take umbrage with the 6 months.
My 75-minute Zoom is challenging as fuck. But in that, I was like, I want the highest education one can get. If you were like, I want to make sacred sexuality ours as a couple. Like, I want to be able to make love in a tantric way. I want to be able to live a life of ritual. I want to know how to navigate the hardest conflict with my beloved. I basically want all of the highest education that maybe I never got, nobody gets. And I want to be able to become truly masterful in this practice, in working with energy, in sexual healing, in experiencing states of ecstasy. And it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever created in my whole life. Our group was amazing, and we were incredible just in terms of our love and our magic and everything we got to create together. I literally would like fuck you and then come up with new ideas for like magic. And I want to honor my lineages and my teachers, right? Like, I stand on the shoulders of giants and Ma Anand Sarita and, Minka Devas and my crystal egg lineage and everyone that I've studied with in my life. And there was a real innovation of our alchemy and our lovemaking and our beauty that just like poured through me. And, also I feel like we emphasized some of the sadness in the beginning, but, I washed dishes and cried in Australia. And I also
have a dishwasher.
I know. It's just, there was a lot of dishes. Anyways, me and dishwashers, it's complicated. Anyways, we do have a dishwasher. We weren't living in a shack without a dishwasher, full disclosure. So if you're watching this and you're like, I want to have sex like that. Honestly, I want to have sex like that too. Like, all the time. Then I have made this incredible guide called Epic Sex. And what it does is it trains you in techniques and tools that you can use to have the 6 different types of sex. And so these are sensational sex, where you feel like, ooh, like all activated and your feels are all there. Electric sex, where that chemistry is crackling and you can actually create that with tools like breath work and conscious touch. Wild sex, where you can actually train your nervous system to let go of inhibitions or thinking too much or being in your head and let go into your deep primal expression, which is so sexy to do with someone that you love. You learn tantric sex, which is how to activate your energy system, your chakras, and to be able to see the divine in your lover. Kinky sex, which trains you in how to create safe spaces so that you can explore edges and fantasies together. And enlightened sex, which teaches you all about masculine, feminine polarity dynamics, how to get into peak radiance and surrender, or peak presence and containment. So if this is something that you want to explore, you can go ahead and get the guide. It's totally free. It's 77 pages. It is chock full of amazing trainings, and you can get it at laylamartin.com/epic sex. That's laylamartin.com/epic sex. I've also included that link inside the show notes so you can access it anytime. But in that, I also built one of the most beautiful temple of my life out in the jungle, and attended to it every day with the most gorgeous Australian flowers. And I'd wake up at 4 a.m. and I would sing the most sacred hymns to the dawn. And like, our love alchemized that as well. This really deep lived spirituality through our love making, through our rituals. And we made something of unimaginable beauty.
To this day, I am awestruck at the universality of what we went through. I had this reservation, or my rational mind did. It's like, oh, so much of what we're putting together in this curriculum, it seems idiosyncratic to some of the hurdles that we had to jump over. And, I knew that there was going to be universality, but I was blown away by just how many different couples from different walks of life at different stages of their relating, so newlyweds through to people who've been together for 20, 30 years, come up and saying, wow, you know what? We went through something similar, analogous, or sometimes even identical to what you guys just shared. And they would then relay how a specific practice or a specific ritual that we'd imparted in that 6-month container had really shifted the dial for them and had been a catalyst for an incredible transformation and breakthrough for them. And the regularity with which that was being reported back to me, I had to just pinch myself. I was like truly blown away.
Yeah. And it was also so beautiful with these practices. It's like they would bring us together into a most magnificent ritual, or like the most ecstatic lovemaking in an ancient waterfall, or like we built an amazing crystal yantra on the beach one time and like channeled for Lionsgate. And, you know, so much of that I wove into the practices that we ended up teaching. And what was so amazing is like that could heal us, but it could make another couple heal from some trauma we never would have imagined, or another couple who had been married for 25 years have the best sex of their life, right? Like the beauty of how these practices can hold a couple in so many different dimensions so that they can access the deepest love, the deepest healing, the deepest magic together. And I think in some ways there was something so beautiful about our alchemy of like being able to taste the highest magic between us. And every couple has that capacity.
Truly.
And this like mind-blowingly deep sex, and every couple has that capacity.
Truly.
And then all the bullshit that gets in the way. And, you know, for some people it's fighting, for some people it's trauma, for some people it's busyness, for some people it's dissociation, for some people it's children.
Taking each other for granted, getting too tired, not attending to one's body, not attending to one's mindset, or falling prey to this insidious, terrible idea about, well, you know, it should just happen naturally. And it's like, well, no, Eros is like something that needs to be attended to. Yeah. You get the sex life that you deserve. You get the sex life that you cultivate. You get the depth of connection, bliss, transcendence, transparency, authenticity, intimacy that you work for, that you intentionally imbue into your dynamic. It is a living tapestry that requires energy, it requires intention, it requires showing up for just in small parts every single day. And you can sit there and go, oh, you know what, I don't have the time for this, and that will be your reality. Or you can say, I am going to make this a non-negotiable part of our, if not our day, then our week.
Yes. Yeah.
And having this weekly or bi-weekly drop-in via Zoom, which is then punctuated by week-long immersions in retreat, where you can deep dive into this armamentarium of tools, this body of knowledge, this framework that has been so lovingly crafted by someone who lives, breathes, eats and sleeps this, one Layla Martin, but doing it in a way that is so practical, so pragmatic, so translatable into the daily life of a modern busy couple. Yeah. That to me has been just like, I was blown away at how masterfully that was put together by you.
And so many pieces of it that have touched me so deeply. Number one, men understandably being hesitant to study with me if I've been so female focused for so long. I mean, I started out teaching men. My work was, you know, I cut my teeth working with men, but then really chose to focus on women for a period of time. And for them to realize like how deeply I honor the masculine, like how deeply the restoration of masculine power on this planet like means to me. And that I'm just as much a guardian of female empowerment and awakening as I am of men. And that is so potent. And to see so much of this work that I've been developing for years and years and years, like, I mean, I'm 9 years into a professional training and working with people for almost 2 full years in their professional development, which creates a level of depth and understanding of a body of work. And to see that transform men so powerfully. Yeah. But the other piece is, you know, Annie Lala always used to say, I feel like the world is going to transform from couples in love who teach together. And one of the things that I've loved so much is that the men in that group would never have gotten to where they got without you and your transmission and your power. And I know that for all of my power and all of my authority and everything that I've developed to my own mastery, that I am so much more impactful with you on stage with me, that our co-creation and our alchemy amplifies, you know. And of course we had to navigate some of that power dynamic. And of course, when I've been doing it for so long, you know, there's working through all of that, and us sitting together and holding that sacred space as the masculine and the feminine is so beautiful.
It is. It's powerful. It is microcosm, a fractal expression of the lifelong pursuit of integrating the masculine and feminine energies and archetypal polarities within oneself.
Yeah.
And then doing that again within the framework of the dyad, in the framework of one's divine relating. And one of my greatest joys in life is acting as best as I can as that bridge between the scientific and the spiritual. So often men are yearning to be seen, to be celebrated, to be accepted into this feminine portal of weaving and magic and Shakti. But at the same time, there is this like, oh, I don't know about all this woo-woo bullshit. Like, and then just explaining in the most mechanistic, scientific as possible terms what energy is, what energy fluency is, what the biological correlates of becoming a multi-orgasmic man are, what the anatomical and physiological mechanisms by which this skill can be engendered and mastered within your body. And really just sharing that in this no-nonsense, very clear way, and drawing upon my medical knowledge to do it has been one of the greatest joys of my life.
Yes.
Because having to work around the intellectual defense mechanisms of my own mind was how I was able to come to a deeper understanding of the truly astonishingly mystical nature of the universe. And to be able to impart some of that is, again, I just pinch myself that I've been afforded that opportunity. So
yes. And I love that we get to re-imprint what is possible between a man and a woman, because you are so powerful and so in your masculine, and you up-level me so that I can be even more powerful. And I'm already pretty damn powerful.
A little bit.
And power is not a zero-sum game.
Truly, it's not.
You know, I can be so deeply in my surrender and my feminine and devoted to you and still like the bad bitch that I am. And you can be so in your power and your truth and hold yourself with such mastery and still like, truly, I feel you in devotion to my magic and my mastery and my safety. It's so wonderful. Wow. And yet that shouldn't be rare. And sadly, it kind of is.
Again, it's that notion of a man is never diminished by virtue of the powerful expression of the woman by his side, unless he chooses to be, unless he is inherently choosing a disempowering frame. It's like you can be in the depth of your potency and in the absolute expression of your masculine frame and allow the feminine to pop and shine and weave alongside you.
Support, I would say.
Truly.
Yeah, I think we've definitely gotten to a place where it's like you look at a man with a super powerful queen by his side and you're like, damn, he must really be confident, you know? It's so beautiful to like change all of that up. And for those of you listening, we are doing the Tantric Mastermind. Again, we are going back to the castle, and we're also going to a really magical place. We would love to have you if you feel drawn. You can go ahead and make sure that you are signed up to my email list at laylamartin.com. That's where we'll give you all of the information. There's also a wait list. You can find the link to that down below this podcast. If you have a feeling that this program is for you, it's truly, truly, truly magnificent. So I'd love to close today, baby, by just sharing a few gratitudes for each other that are just very alive in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Ladies first.
Okay. So I am grateful. I am grateful for the moments when you said, I have seen all of your crazy and I love you more than ever.
I am grateful for all the ways in which you move in the world. I am grateful for your capacity to love me with understanding and compassion when I have not only gone to Crazy Town, but pitched a tent and set up camp there. I am deeply grateful that this is your North Star. I am so grateful that this is what you live your life in service to. And I'm so grateful for the profundity, the levity, and the fecundability of your vision and of your approach to life.
I am so grateful for every choice you ever made before you met me, to be courageous, to be powerful, to heal, so that you could meet me in the spiritual depths and in the heights of ecstasy and in the deepest tantric rituals.
Thank you.
I love you so much.
I love you so much.
Thank you for listening to this Tantric Life. I am Layla Martin. This is the home for the realest conversations about sex, spirituality, polarity, conscious relationships, and all kinds of topics that help us live the absolute most incredible lives. Please check out the next episode. Please go ahead and leave your rating and review on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. It's so helpful when you do that. If you want to stay connected to me, the most helpful supportive thing you can do is to head over to laylamartin.com, sign up with your email address. That connects you to me if you want to study deeper with me, if you want to receive my deeper teachings. I do it predominantly via email. Finally, you can check me out on Instagram at @the Layla Martin. And thank you so much for being here.